Right now, in this exact moment, something is already trying to take control of your day before it even begins. And if you don't recognize it, you will lose battles you never even saw coming. Most people wake up and step straight into pressure, noise, and distraction without realizing that the first minutes of their day quietly decide everything that follows. This is where many people fail, not because they are weak, but because they never learned how to position themselves before the day starts. You feel it, don't you? That weight before anything even happens. That tension in your mind, that subtle anxiety, that sense that something is off but you cannot fully explain it. That is not random. There is a reason your thoughts feel attacked before your day even begins. There is a reason peace feels distant in the very moments you need it most. If you skip what you are about to hear, you risk repeating the same cycle again today. The same emotional exhaustion, the same mental battles, the same feeling of being overwhelmed before you even had a chance to stand strong. But if you stay here, something shifts. Not later, not eventually, right now. This is not just another prayer. This is a realignment. This is where your mind is covered, your spirit is strengthened, and your day is no longer left exposed. There is a way to step into today with clarity instead of confusion, with peace instead of pressure, with strength instead of silent fear. In the next moments, you are going to step into something most people ignore, but desperately need. And once you see it, you will not be able to go back to starting your day the same way again. Stay here. This is where your day begins to change. Why your mind feels attacked before anything even happens. There is a reason your mind feels crowded, restless, and heavy before your day even begins. It is not just tiredness. It is not just stress. There is a deeper battle happening, one that most people feel, but do not understand. You wake up, and before anything actually happens, your thoughts are already racing. Doubt shows up without invitation. Worry begins to whisper. Pressure starts building before you even leave your bed. This is where many people lose without realizing it, not in the middle of the day, not when problems appear, but in these quiet, invisible moments where the mind is left unguarded. Because when your thoughts are not aligned, everything else begins to follow that same direction. Your emotions shift, your decisions weaken, your peace disappears slowly, almost silently. Have you noticed how quickly your mind can go from calm to overwhelmed? One thought leads to another, then another, until suddenly you are carrying a weight that was never meant to be yours. And the worst part is that it feels normal. It feels like this is just how life is supposed to be. But it is not. There is a pattern behind this. When your mind is not intentionally grounded, it becomes vulnerable. It absorbs fear faster than faith. It magnifies problems before solutions even have a chance to exist. And without realizing it, you start reacting to a day that has not even unfolded yet. This is not weakness, this is exposure. But here is where everything begins to shift. The moment you recognize that this battle is happening, you are no longer controlled by it. You begin to see clearly. You begin to understand that what you feel is not permanent. And more importantly, it is not stronger than the authority you have access to. Because your mind was never meant to be a battlefield where fear dominates. It was meant to be a place of direction, clarity, and peace. But that only happens when you choose to take control before anything else tries to take it from you. And that leads to something most people avoid, something that quietly leaves them vulnerable without even noticing. The dangerous habit that leaves you spiritually exposed. There is a habit that looks harmless, feels normal, and yet quietly weakens everything in your life. It happens every single day, and most people never question it. You wake up, reach for your phone, step into responsibilities, start thinking about problems, and move forward without ever grounding yourself spiritually. It feels productive, it feels necessary, but it is exactly where exposure begins. Because when you start your day without intention, without alignment, without inviting God into your first moments, you are stepping into a battle unprepared. You are allowing your mind to be shaped by pressure before it is anchored in truth. And once that happens, everything else becomes reactive. Your emotions respond to circumstances. Your thoughts follow whatever feels strongest in the moment. Your peace becomes fragile. This is not about guilt. This is about awareness. Most people believe they are just busy, just distracted, just dealing with life. But in reality, they are disconnected at the exact moment they should be most anchored. They try to fix their mood later. They try to regain control later. They try to find peace later. But by then, the day has already taken a direction that is much harder to shift. Think about it. How different would your day feel if your first thoughts were not fear, pressure, or urgency, but clarity, strength, and presence? What if instead of reacting to everything around you, you were already grounded before anything even touched you? This habit is dangerous because it feels invisible. It does not look like failure. It looks like routine, but it slowly trains your mind to operate without spiritual covering, without guidance, without protection, and over time, that becomes your default state. But here is the truth most people never realize. The first moments of your day are not small. They are decisive. They set the tone, the direction, and the strength you carry into everything else. And once you break this pattern, once you choose something different, everything begins to change in ways you did not expect. Because what happens next is not just a shift in routine. It is a shift in authority. What actually changes? When you put God first. The moment you choose to put God first, something immediate begins to shift, even if nothing around you has changed yet. The circumstances may look the same. The responsibilities are still there. The challenges have not disappeared. But internally, everything starts aligning in a different direction. And that internal shift is what changes the outcome of your entire day. Instead of waking up into pressure, you step into clarity. Instead of reacting emotionally to every thought, you begin to respond with intention. There is a calm that does not come from having everything under control, but from knowing you are not facing anything alone. That alone changes how you think, how you speak, how you move. When God comes first, your mind is no longer the starting point. Your emotions are no longer leading your decisions. You are no longer trying to figure everything out by yourself. There is guidance. There is direction. There is a quiet confidence that does not depend on how the day unfolds. And this is where most people miss it. They think the benefit is something external, like fewer problems or easier situations. But the real transformation happens within you. Your perspective changes. What used to overwhelm you no longer has the same power. What used to trigger anxiety begins to lose its intensity. Not because life became easier, but because you became anchored. You begin to notice something else as well. There is a sense of protection that you cannot fully explain. Situations that could have escalated do not. Decisions become clearer. You avoid things that would have drained you. Doors that are not meant for you no longer pull your attention the same way. It is not coincidence. It is alignment. Putting God first does not remove responsibility. It strengthens your capacity to carry it. It does not eliminate challenges. It equips you to face them without losing your peace. And most importantly, it shifts your identity from someone reacting to life into someone who walks through life with purpose and authority. But there is something even deeper than this. Because what you are stepping into is not just a better mindset or a calmer morning. It is something far more powerful, something most people misunderstand completely. What you are about to enter is not just a moment of prayer. It is positioning. This is not just a prayer. It is spiritual positioning. Most people see prayer as a moment, a pause, something you do when you need help, when you feel overwhelmed, or when things are not going the way you expected. But that understanding is limited, and because of that, it keeps you operating below the level of authority that is already available to you. What you are stepping into right now is not just a prayer. It is positioning. Positioning means you are choosing where you stand before anything else begins. It means you are not waiting for problems to define your response. You are deciding your alignment in advance, and that changes everything, because when you are positioned correctly, you are no longer reacting to life. You are moving with direction through it. Think about this carefully. Two people can face the same situation, the same pressure, the same unexpected challenge, and yet experience completely different outcomes. The difference is not the situation. It is the position they are standing in when it happens. When you position yourself in God, you are not approaching the day from uncertainty. You are standing from a place of covering, authority, and clarity. Your thoughts are no longer scattered. Your emotions are no longer leading without direction. There is structure within you, even if everything around you feels unstable. This is why prayer is powerful, not because of the words alone, but because of what it establishes within you. It realigns your focus. It strengthens your awareness. It places you in a state where fear does not have the same access it once had. And once you begin to understand this, prayer stops being something you fit into your day. It becomes the foundation you build your day on. You are not asking from a place of desperation. You are standing from a place of connection. You are not trying to reach something distant. You are recognizing a presence that is already near, already available, already active. This is positioning. And once you are positioned, you are ready to enter a place that most people hear about but very few truly experience. A place where everything begins to shift, not gradually, but deeply and intentionally. Because there is a space where clarity becomes stronger, where peace becomes steady, and where your connection becomes personal. And that is where we are going next. Entering the secret place, where everything shifts. There is a place that cannot be reached by effort alone, a place that is not physical, yet it changes everything that is physical around you. Most people live their entire lives aware of it, but never truly enter it. They hear about peace, they hear about presence, they hear about intimacy with God, but it remains distant, almost abstract. And the reason is simple. They never slow down enough to step into it intentionally. This is what Scripture calls the secret place. It is not hidden because it is inaccessible. It is hidden because it requires a decision most people avoid. The decision to disconnect from noise, from urgency, from distraction, and become fully present with God. Not rushed, not divided, not thinking about the next task. Just present. When you enter this place, something immediate begins to happen. Your mind starts to settle. The constant movement of thoughts begins to slow down. The weight you have been carrying without noticing starts to surface, not to overwhelm you, but to be released. And in that moment, you realize something powerful. You were never meant to carry everything on your own. This is where everything shifts. Because in the secret place, you are no longer performing. You are no longer trying to say the perfect words or follow a structure. You are simply there, open, aware, and connected. And that connection changes how you experience everything else. Peace in this place is not fragile. It does not depend on what is happening outside. It is steady. It holds you in a way that external circumstances cannot break. Clarity begins to rise, not as loud answers, but as a quiet certainty that guides your next steps. You start to sense direction without forcing it. You begin to feel strengthened without understanding how. There is a covering that surrounds your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions. And even if challenges come later, they no longer enter the same way, because you are no longer in the same state. Most people try to fix their day from the outside. They try to organize, control, and manage everything they can see. But real transformation starts here, in a place that cannot be seen, yet defines everything that follows. And once you step into this place consistently, you begin to realize that prayer is not just communication. It is access. It is alignment. It is where your internal world is reset, before the external world even has a chance to influence you. But before anything is asked, before any request is made, there is something even more important that needs to happen here. Because entering this place is not about bringing your demands first. It is about aligning your heart. Before you ask for anything, align your heart. Most people enter prayer with a list. Needs, worries, desires, urgent situations. It feels natural, almost automatic. You come with what is heavy on your mind, hoping for relief, direction, or intervention. But there is something deeper that determines the impact of that moment, and it happens before a single request is made. Alignment. Because prayer is not only about what you say, it is about the state you are in when you say it. You can ask for peace while your heart is still anchored in anxiety. You can ask for direction while resisting change. You can ask for clarity while holding on to confusion. And when that happens, there is tension within you. Not because God is distant, but because your internal posture is not yet positioned to receive what you are asking for. This is why alignment comes first. Alignment is the moment you become aware of what is really happening inside you. It is when you stop speaking for a second and start observing. What are you carrying right now? What emotions are present? What thoughts are dominating your mind? What fears are quietly influencing your decisions? You do not hide these things. You do not try to fix them instantly. You bring them into awareness. And then something powerful begins to happen. You start to shift your focus from yourself to God. Not in a forced way, but intentionally. You recognize who He is before you focus on what you need. You acknowledge His presence, His authority, His faithfulness. And as you do that, your internal state begins to change. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts become clearer. The urgency that was pushing you starts to lose intensity. You are no longer approaching from a place of pressure. You are approaching from a place of connection. This is alignment. It does not mean everything inside you is perfect. It means everything inside you is now oriented in the right direction. Your heart is no longer divided. Your mind is no longer scattered. You are present, aware, and grounded. And when alignment happens, your words carry a different weight. Your requests are no longer driven by fear, but by trust. Your perspective shifts from trying to control outcomes to being open to guidance. This is where prayer becomes real. Because now, instead of speaking from chaos, you are speaking from clarity. Instead of reacting, you are engaging with intention. Instead of chasing answers, you are positioned to receive them. But there is still something many people hold on to even after this moment. Something that quietly drains their strength. Something that keeps them from fully stepping into peace. It is the weight they have been carrying, and it is time to release it. Releasing what is weighing you down right now. There is a weight you have been carrying that no one else can fully see. It does not always show on the outside, but you feel it. It follows your thoughts, shapes your reactions, drains your energy before the day even begins. And over time it becomes so familiar that you stop questioning it. You start calling it normal. But it was never meant to stay with you. This is the moment where everything becomes personal. Not general, not distant, right now. What is pressing on your mind? What is sitting heavy in your chest? What is that one thing you keep replaying, trying to solve, trying to control, but it never really leaves? That is the weight. And the truth is, holding on to it feels like control, but it is actually what keeps you stuck. Because as long as you carry it alone, it continues to shape your perspective. It filters how you see everything else. It turns small situations into overwhelming ones. It keeps your mind in a constant state of tension. Releasing it does not mean ignoring it. It does not mean pretending it does not exist. It means making a conscious decision to stop carrying it by yourself. Right now, without overthinking, bring it into your awareness. Name it clearly. Do not generalize it. Be specific. Is it fear about the future? Is it something unresolved from the past? Is it pressure, expectation, disappointment, frustration? Once you recognize it, something shifts, because now you are not avoiding it. You are confronting it in a different way. And this is where release begins. You do not need complicated words. You do not need a perfect structure. You need honesty. Real, unfiltered honesty. The kind that does not try to sound right but is simply true. You acknowledge the weight. You admit that it is affecting you, and then, intentionally, you let it go. Not because it is solved, but because you are choosing not to carry it alone anymore. This is not weakness. This is strength in its purest form. Because when you release what is weighing you down, you create space. Space for peace to enter. Space for clarity to rise. Space for strength to build without resistance. You will notice something almost immediately. The intensity begins to fade, the pressure loosens, your mind feels lighter, not because the situation disappeared, but because your relationship with it just changed. You are no longer underneath it. And once that weight is released, there is something else that needs attention. Because even when the external pressure is lifted, there is still a battlefield that operates quietly, consistently, and often unnoticed. Your mind. And if it is not covered, Everything you just released can try to return, covering your mind against invisible battles. There is a battle that does not announce itself. It does not make noise. It does not ask for permission. And most of the time it is already happening before you even notice. It takes place in your thoughts. Quietly, repeatedly, strategically. And if you do not become aware of it, it begins to shape everything. A single thought can change your mood, a repeated thought can change your perception, and a dominant thought can change the direction of your entire day. This is why the mind becomes one of the most important areas to guard, yet one of the most neglected. Because these battles are invisible. They do not look like problems at first. They look like assumptions. They sound like internal voices questioning your worth, your future, your ability. They show up as doubt, as fear, as subtle negativity that slowly builds until it feels real, until it feels true. But not every thought deserves agreement. And this is where covering your mind becomes essential. Covering your mind means you are no longer passive about what you allow to stay. It means you stop accepting every thought as truth. You begin to filter, to discern, to recognize what aligns with peace and what feeds confusion. Right now, think about the thoughts that have been repeating in your mind. The ones that keep coming back. Are they strengthening you or are they weakening you? Are they bringing clarity or are they creating tension? This awareness is the first step. Because once you recognize the pattern, you can interrupt it. You do not fight thoughts by force. You shift them by replacing what does not belong with what is true, what is stable, what is grounded. You bring your mind back into alignment, again and again, until the noise loses its influence. This is not a one-time action. It is a daily positioning. And as you begin to do this, something changes. Your mind becomes quieter but not empty, focused, stable, protected. The same thoughts that once controlled your reactions begin to lose power because they no longer find agreement within you. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing intentionally. This is what it means to cover your mind. And when your mind is covered, everything else begins to respond differently. Your emotions stabilize. Your decisions become clearer. Your responses become more grounded. You are no longer easily shaken by what tries to enter. But there is something even deeper that needs to be protected. Something that goes beyond your thoughts. Something that touches every part of your life. Because what matters most to you also needs to be covered. And that is where we are going next. Declaring protection over what matters most to you. There are things in your life that carry weight beyond explanation. People, relationships, moments, responsibilities. They are not just part of your routine. They are part of your heart. And because they matter deeply, they also become areas where you feel the greatest concern. This is where your attention naturally goes. You think about their safety, their future, their well-being. You try to anticipate problems before they happen. You try to control what you can, fix what feels uncertain, protect what feels vulnerable. But there is a limit to what you can manage on your own. And that realization can either create anxiety or shift you into a different kind of action. Because protection is not only physical. It is not only about what you can see, predict, or prevent. There are influences, pressures, and situations that operate outside your control. And trying to carry all of that alone will always leave you feeling stretched, restless, and never fully at peace. This is where declaration becomes powerful. Declaring protection is not about repeating empty words. It is about consciously placing what matters most into a position of covering. It is an intentional act. A decision to stop holding everything with your own strength and instead place it under something greater than your own capacity. Right now, bring those people, those areas, those concerns into your awareness. Do not rush this moment. See them clearly. Feel the importance they carry in your life. And then, instead of holding them tightly with fear, shift your posture. Release the need to control every outcome. Release the tension of trying to anticipate every risk. Release the pressure of feeling like everything depends on you. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you change how you carry what you care about. You begin to cover it with intention. You recognize that real protection goes beyond what you can physically manage. It extends into what you cannot see, what you cannot predict, what you cannot solve ahead of time. And as you make this shift, something changes inside you. The constant tension begins to ease. The urgency to control every detail starts to fade. You begin to experience a different kind of confidence, not because everything is guaranteed to go exactly as planned, but because you are no longer trying to sustain everything on your own. There is a quiet strength that replaces that pressure. You start to move through your day with less fear and more stability, less overthinking and more trust. You are still attentive, still present, still responsible, but no longer overwhelmed by the weight of what you cannot control. Because what matters most is no longer carried by your strength alone. And once that shift happens, something deeper can be addressed, because there are things that have been working quietly, subtly, almost unnoticed, influencing your life in ways you may not have fully recognized, and those things need to be confronted. Breaking what has been quietly working against you. Not everything that affects your life is obvious. Some things do not arrive with noise or disruption. They settle in quietly, repeating patterns, shaping reactions, influencing decisions without drawing attention to themselves. That is why they are difficult to confront. Because what works quietly often feels normal. It can look like constant discouragement that you have learned to accept. It can sound like a voice that questions your progress every time you try to move forward. It can feel like resistance that shows up at the exact moment you decide to change something in your life. And over time, these patterns begin to feel familiar. But familiar does not mean healthy, and repeated does not mean permanent. There are cycles that have been operating in your life that were never meant to stay. Thoughts that have repeated for too long. Reactions that have become automatic. Limitations that you have unknowingly agreed with. And the longer they go unchallenged, the stronger they appear. This is where a shift must happen. Breaking what has been working against you begins with recognition. You start to notice patterns instead of just experiencing them. You identify what keeps repeating instead of assuming it is just part of who you are. Ask yourself honestly, what keeps happening in your life that you cannot ignore anymore? What thoughts return even after you try to move past them? What situations seem to repeat in different forms? This awareness is not meant to create frustration. It is meant to create clarity. Because once you see it, you can no longer pretend it is random. And once you acknowledge it, you can begin to disengage from it. Breaking these patterns does not require force. It requires decision. A clear internal boundary where you stop agreeing with what has been holding you back. You stop reinforcing the same reactions. You stop feeding the same thoughts. You stop accepting the same limitations. This may feel unfamiliar at first, because when something has been part of your pattern for a long time, stepping out of it feels uncomfortable. There may be resistance. There may be moments where it feels easier to go back to what is known. But this is where transformation happens, not in comfort, but in awareness, followed by action. Each time you choose differently, even in small ways, you weaken what once had control. Each time you refuse to repeat the same pattern, you create space for something new to take place. And slowly, what once felt strong begins to lose its influence. You are not reacting the same way. You are not thinking the same way. You are not responding the same way. Something is shifting. And as this shift continues, you begin to experience something that may have felt distant for a long time. A sense of calm, of steadiness, of internal order that is not easily shaken. Because once what was working against you begins to break, something else begins to take its place. Peace. And that is where we are going next. Calling peace into the areas that feel out of control. There are areas in your life that feel stable, predictable, manageable. But there are also areas that feel completely different. Places where things do not respond the way you expect. Situations that shift without warning. Circumstances that seem to resist your efforts no matter how much you try to fix them. And it is usually in those areas that your thoughts become restless. You revisit the same concerns repeatedly. You try to calculate outcomes. You imagine scenarios trying to prepare yourself for what might happen. And even when nothing is happening in that exact moment, the internal tension remains. That is what lack of control does. It pulls your focus into constant anticipation. But there is a different way to respond. Peace is not something that arrives when everything is resolved. It is something that can be established even when things are still uncertain. And that changes everything. Because instead of waiting for circumstances to calm down, you begin to bring calm into the circumstances. Right now, identify the areas in your life that feel unsettled. Do not generalize. Be specific. A relationship that feels strained. A decision that feels unclear. A situation that is not resolved the way you expected. See it clearly. Notice what it does to your thoughts. Notice how your mind responds to it. The tension, the repetition, the sense of instability. Now, instead of trying to solve it immediately, shift your approach. You do not need to control everything to experience peace. You need to change how you relate to what you cannot control. Calling peace into these areas begins with releasing the need for immediate resolution. It means allowing space between the situation and your reaction to it. It means choosing not to let uncertainty dictate your internal state. This is not passive. It is intentional. You are deciding that your stability will not depend on everything going your way. You are choosing to remain steady even when things are still in process. And as you make that decision, something begins to settle inside you. The urgency softens. The pressure reduces. The constant mental activity begins to slow down. You are still aware of the situation. You are still engaged. But you are no longer consumed by it. That is the beginning of peace. And from that place you begin to see more clearly. You respond more wisely. You move with more intention instead of reacting out of tension. Peace creates space for clarity. And clarity changes how you move forward. Because when your internal state is no longer controlled by external instability, you begin to access something deeper, a strength that does not come from having everything figured out, but from knowing you can remain steady even when things are not. And that realization leads to something powerful. Because in the moments where you feel like you have the least strength, there is actually a starting point that most people overlook, and that is where we go next. When you feel weak, this is where strength begins. There are moments when you feel like you have nothing left to give. Not physically, but internally. Your energy is low, your focus is scattered, and even simple decisions feel heavier than they should. You try to push through it. You try to motivate yourself. You tell yourself to keep going. But the more you force it, the more you feel the resistance inside. That is because real strength does not begin where pressure increases. It begins where honesty is allowed. Most people misunderstand weakness. They treat it like a flaw that needs to be hidden or corrected quickly. But weakness is not the problem. Ignoring it is. Because when you ignore what you are actually feeling, you disconnect from the very place where transformation starts. Right now, instead of pushing past your limits, acknowledge them. Recognize where you feel tired, uncertain, or overwhelmed. Not as something to fix immediately, but as something to understand. Because beneath that feeling, there is information. Weakness shows you where you have been carrying too much, where you have been relying only on your own effort, where you have been trying to control outcomes that were never fully in your hands. And once you see that clearly, something shifts. You stop fighting against your current state. You stop pretending you have more energy than you actually do. You stop measuring your value by how strong you appear. Instead, you begin to rebuild from a place that is real. Strength starts to grow when you allow yourself to reset, when you give yourself space to recover internally, when you focus on what you can do instead of being overwhelmed by everything you cannot. This is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters with clarity. One step at a time, one decision at a time, and as you move in that way, something begins to return. Your focus stabilizes. Your thoughts become clearer. Your energy starts to rebuild, not through pressure, but through alignment. Because real strength is not constant intensity. It is consistency built on awareness. It is knowing when to move forward and when to pause, when to act and when to reflect, when to push and when to reset. And once you begin to operate from that understanding, weakness loses its power over you. It becomes a signal, not a limitation. a starting point, not an ending. And from that starting point, you begin to step into your day differently, more aware, more grounded, more prepared for what is ahead. Because when your internal state is aligned, your external actions begin to follow with more clarity and confidence. And that leads directly into the next step, moving forward with intention, stability, and direction. Stepping into your day, covered, led, and strengthened. There is a clear difference between starting your day reactively and stepping into it intentionally. Most people wake up and immediately respond to demands, notifications, responsibilities, and expectations. The day begins by pulling them in different directions before they even have the chance to establish clarity. And without realizing it, they spend the rest of the day trying to recover a sense of control they never actually claimed. But when you step into your day covered, led, and strengthened, everything changes from the very beginning. You are no longer entering the day unprepared. You are not waiting to see what happens before deciding how you will respond. You are moving forward with direction already established internally. That means your reactions are no longer automatic. They become intentional. Think about how different your decisions become when your mind is not scattered, when your thoughts are not racing, when your emotions are not dictating your responses in real time. You begin to move with awareness. Situations that would normally trigger frustration or anxiety lose their intensity. Delays do not shake you the same way. Unexpected challenges do not feel like immediate threats, because you are no longer operating from a place of instability. Being covered means you are not exposed to every external influence. Not every opinion, not every pressure, not every situation has access to your internal state. There is a filter now, a level of discernment that protects your focus. Being led means you are not guessing your way through the day. You are not making decisions based only on urgency or emotion. You are moving with a sense of direction, even in small choices. And being strengthened means you are not depending on fluctuating energy or motivation. You are grounded in something deeper than how you feel in the moment. This combination changes how you show up. You speak differently. You think differently. You respond differently. And most importantly, you begin to notice that you are no longer just reacting to life. You are actively shaping how you experience it. That does not mean everything will go perfectly. It means that even when things are not ideal, you remain steady. And that steadiness becomes your advantage. Because consistency in how you think and act creates momentum. And momentum creates progress. So as you step into this day, do not rush into it. Be aware of how you are entering it. Because the way you begin determines how you continue. And when you begin from a place of clarity, protection, and strength, you carry that into everything that follows, which leads to a decision that goes beyond today. A decision that can reshape the next several days if you choose to commit to it. The decision that will change your next 7 days. There is a moment right now where everything can either stay the same or begin to shift. Not because something external changes, but because you decide to move differently from this point forward. Most people wait for a new week, a new situation, or a new feeling to start again. They delay change, believing it requires the perfect moment. But real change does not begin with conditions. It begins with a decision. And the simplest way to prove that to yourself is through a short, intentional commitment. 7 days. Not a lifetime. Not an abstract goal. Just the next 7 days approached with clarity and purpose. Imagine what happens if for the next 7 days you stop starting your day reactively. Instead of waking up and immediately responding to everything around you, you take control of how your day begins. You pause. You become aware. You align your thoughts before anything else influences them. This is where the shift begins. Because consistency, even in small actions, creates measurable change. The way you think begins to stabilize. Your reactions become more controlled. Your decisions become more intentional. And most importantly, you start to see the difference for yourself. This is not about perfection. There will be moments where your focus slips, moments where old patterns try to return. That is expected. What matters is not avoiding those moments. It is returning to your decision every time you notice the shift. That is where real discipline is built. So define it clearly. For the next 7 days, you choose to begin your day with intention. You choose to create space before reacting. You choose to establish clarity before engaging with everything else. Make it specific. Decide what the first few minutes of your day will look like. No distractions, no external input. Just a focused moment where you set your direction internally. Because the beginning of your day is not just a routine, it is a positioning. And once you repeat that positioning consistently, you begin to build something that extends beyond these 7 days. You create a pattern, a new baseline, a different way of operating that no longer depends on how you feel in the moment. And once that pattern is established, everything else begins to follow. Your focus improves, your emotional responses stabilize, your sense of control increases, not because life becomes easier, but because you become more intentional. And after 7 days, you will not need someone to tell you it works. You will see it. You will feel it. You will recognize the difference in how you move through your day. And that recognition leads to something even more powerful. Because once you experience that shift, you realize that this is only the beginning of a much larger transformation. This is where your testimony begins. There will be a moment, sooner than you expect, when you stop and realize something is different. Not in a dramatic, overwhelming way. Not through a sudden external breakthrough, but in the quiet internal shifts that begin to show up in how you think, how you respond, and how you move through your day. You will notice that situations that once unsettled you no longer have the same effect. Conversations that used to drain you feel more controlled. Decisions that once felt confusing begin to carry more clarity. And in that moment, you recognize something important. Change has already started. Not because everything around you transformed, but because you did. This is where your testimony begins. It does not begin when everything is perfect. It begins when you can see, with honesty, that you are no longer the same person you were before you made the decision to move differently. Think about what that means. It means you are no longer reacting the same way. You are no longer allowing every thought to control you. You are no longer starting your day without direction. You have created separation between who you were and who you are becoming. And that separation is powerful, because it proves that transformation is not something distant or unreachable. It is something that unfolds through consistent, intentional decisions made in moments that most people overlook. Now, consider where this can go. If 7 days can begin to shift your awareness, what can happen in 14, in 30, in 90? What happens when this becomes your default way of starting the day? When clarity, focus, and intentionality are no longer something you try to create, but something you naturally operate from. That is where real change compounds. And that is where your story begins to carry weight. Not because you say the right words, but because your life reflects the difference. People begin to notice it. Not always immediately, but consistently. In how you respond. In how you carry yourself. In the steadiness you bring into situations that used to feel overwhelming. And when that happens, your experience becomes more than personal. It becomes something that can impact others. Because the same shift that started quietly in your own routine now has the potential to influence the way someone else sees their own situation. That is how transformation expands. It starts internally, it becomes visible externally, and eventually it reaches beyond you. So do not underestimate what has begun. This is not a temporary adjustment. It is the foundation of something that can continue to grow if you choose to stay consistent. And from this point forward, every day becomes another opportunity to reinforce it. Another opportunity to move with clarity. Another opportunity to strengthen what has already started. This is not the end of the process. This is the point where it becomes real.